So welcome back and hello if you are brand new. Today I'm going to be talking about death metal. Now death metal as a genre has been one that's always been quite tongue-in-cheek and not to be taken too seriously. So who better to exemplify all the ideas of what death metal represents than Cannabis Corpse? If you're unfamiliar with the band, Cannabis Corpse create absolutely reliable death metal but have this tongue-in-cheek kind of puns that they use from classic death metal albums or death metal songs, and it's a homage to the absolute greats that are Cannibal Corpse. But most importantly, it's all weed oriented, which I think is absolutely hilarious. So with that in mind, we delve into Nug So Vile. With that in mind, the terrible puns that have been chosen for this album, I think I've got all of the bands are Immolation, Cryptopsy, Cannibal Corpse, Vader, Carcass, Napalm Death, Morbid Angel, and Christian. What's always been the lifeblood of Cannabis Corpse's sound is the idea of the old school. And I think that particularly this album really kind of exemplifies what the band stand for. Now, with the idea of old school, I don't necessarily just mean death metal. For example, Blasphemy Made Hash is kind of almost dipping its toe in both pools, if you see what I mean. So you've got death metal, but then midway through that track, it moves into more of a thrash punk aesthetic. And particularly near the end of the album, where we go into From Enslavement to Hydrobliteration, which again has that punk element to it. And it's these riffs that work a lot faster than usual that really kind of create that sense of energy that you would have synonymous with punk. The classic elements that have always portrayed death metal for me have been in the vibe, the production, but most importantly, those kind of stories. I've always felt that early Cannibal Corpse records in particular have been almost like Tales from the Crypt. And on Nug So Vile, they've kind of reignited that sort of passion for it, particularly on Dawn of Weed Possession, which talks about a policeman who gets possessed by these like weedlings and starts murdering everyone. It's hilarious. The track itself is actually slower and more doom oriented, which I think is something that Cannabis Corpse haven't actually experimented with too much previously, which is quite refreshing to see. But even though I'm talking about atmosphere, there is very strong songwriting on this album as well, particularly on Chiba Jigsaw Quandary, which, as you can imagine, is a play on Carcass's Corporal Jigsaw Quandary. So the best way I can describe this is that it almost seems like a song in two parts. So it starts off quite heavy and, thrashy, but then moves into more of a mid-paced, kind of half-time death metal stomp. But possibly the most important thing here is that George Corpse Grinder Fisher from Cannibal Corpse is on this track and really fucking rams those vocals down your throat. Another guest spot comes in the form of Blasphemy Made Hash, where Black Dahlia Murder guitarist Brandon Ellis comes in to deliver an absolutely scorching solo, which I thought was really, really cool. On this album, songs are slightly more complex in their arrangements, such as Blunt Force Domain, again a homage to Christian, but then there are also elements where it's very much classic run-of-the-mill Cannabis Corpse. So it's a bit of a juxtaposition of the two, really. There are some very fluid transitions on this album, don't get me wrong, such as on Cylinders of Madness, a homage to Altars of Madness, where even though it's a 2-minute song, it's very direct and it does what it kind of needs to do. But for me, it would have been interesting to see the band potentially experiment a little bit further. The problem is with Cannabis Corpse that I think that they sometimes can be a little bit repetitive. Now, for the most part, the album eschews this, but At times it can kind of come back and it does really kind of halt the song a little bit. Even though there are those really great sections where the band get going, it just feels like sometimes they run out of steam a little bit. This is death metal for death metal fans, and even though they may not be reinventing the wheel, they are incredibly good at giving solid death metal. There are all the hallmarks of what you would come to expect from classic death metal. Silly stories, mad song titles, and those kind of almost tongue-in-cheek atmospheric introductions. Even the Iron Maiden inspired artwork of the Wheedling, you know, like eating someone behind a street lamp, all recalls to this sense of nostalgia. And I think that they do very, very well. But there are sections where it does kind of just doesn't quite get there in the end. And it sadly makes it to be a little bit forgettable. When you listen to it, fantastic. But then it doesn't really kind of have you coming back to it a lot. That's the problem I had with the record. Cannabis Corpse's Nug So Vile is definitely not the death metal album of the year that we were all hoping for. But what it does well. And that's kind of it. You know, it's old school classic death metal that if you're a fan, you'll dig it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below, and any shares are always appreciated. I will see you guys very, very soon for another album review. Take care, friends.